the other, so it's,
Right, yeah,
I have them too.
yeah,
Put it up that way.
yeah, if you can, that'd be great. Got a sign-in sheet here. I also have
These are just bigger ones if you want to take. You have some smaller ones just right on the little kiosk
Okay,
out there.
I'll grab
if you
one
want.
over there then.
I've not had an opportunity. We have a sign-in sheet that if you would care to sign in, I can bring it back to you. Smaller versions of the. I'd like to see them a little bit bigger before we put them up on the big screen. We do have them here. see them a little bit bigger. Just to make sure. Able to pick up the small. Larger ones here. If you want. Again, welcome, ladies and gentlemen. We're going to get started in just a few minutes. We wanted to give a little bit of time, just in case the weather kind of delayed some people. If you have not had an opportunity to sign in, there are 2 sign-in sheets on either side of me. As well as there's some smaller diagrams of the first phase of the Waggoner Road project that were able to be picked up in front. There are also some larger versions that are at the tables themselves for you to kind of take a look at that are a little bit more detailed or more magnified for everyone. But we will have these up on our website and social media probably sometime tomorrow. We are obviously working very diligently on getting everything ready for the Tomato Festival, so that probably is why these did not get out there as before the meeting. So we'll get started in just a moment. I was just hoping you were able. No other reason. Couple of years, so we got time. Just the first phase, yeah, just for that one. Well, the other pictures. All right, welcome everyone. My name is Joe Beggany. I'm the mayor of Reynoldsburg, and this is the official public hearing will start in just a second with all the official accoutrements. Ryan Andrews from EMH&T is our city engineer, and he's going to kind of go over some of the more technical aspects of things, but I'll be able to answer some questions at the end about some of the finances. Again, if you had not had a chance to sign in, please do so. We also have the displays for the actual first phase. Real quick, the process is going to be very simple. We're going to go ahead and submit the application sometime, I think, the first week of September, and I'm probably stealing Ryan's thunder on this one. And then we should hopefully find out the results of the application sometime in mid to late December, I believe. And then at that point in time, all the other stuff goes into play as far as planning and all the different staging and everything. I'm going to talk a little bit about the financing options and why we're able to kind of do this from a financial standpoint now, where in the past we have not had the opportunity to do so. We have secured a commitment from Franklin County Engineers Office of $1.7 million, which is actual hard cash money. Before, it was just more of a, we'll help you with property acquisition for right-of-way and things like this. But this is actually going to be a direct check to the city to actually go into this particular one. We met with Cornell Robertson, the Franklin County engineer, believe it or not, pre-COVID is when we first met with him. I think it was probably that first week of March in 2020. We actually walked part of Waggoner Road, and when I say walked, I mean very gingerly walked. I think we parked at Priestley and then, kind of inched out just a little bit onto the rest of it. So that's one of the things, and he was very much concerned about the lack of sidewalks, multi-purpose paths, and things like that. We all remember that there was a young woman who tragically lost her life off McNaughton Road about 2 years ago now. She was on her way walking to school on a road very similar to what Waggoner Road looks like. Not a lot of lighting, no sidewalks, things of that nature, and so that's part of what has spurred this particular thing on. As far as the financial aspects of it, obviously, the OPWC grant is going to be able to contribute a lot of the funding for this. But the reality of it is we're going to be leveraging the MI development that most of you are aware of off of Rotobahn, Waggoner Road, through TIF dollars, and we're going to be using the money that is generated from that to help pay for the facilities on Waggoner Road for Phase 1 and Phase 2. Without digging too deep into the numbers of everything, we originally estimated the houses at that Waggoner Road development at a conservative price of $310,000. When we talked about that with the TIF market last year. That's what the median price was looked at for that development. But because of the housing demand in Central Ohio, because of cost of materials and things of that nature, that price probably will actually be a starting price in that neighborhood of around $330,000. So the base price is now even significantly more higher than what we had originally anticipated, which means the funding is going to be a lot more available with things. So one way or another, well, we all want the OPWC grant to go through because of the way that we're going to be leveraging the property tax dollars from that TIF. It will actually help to pay for these improvements all the way across, in addition to what Franklin County is offering, in addition to a smaller but just as important contribution from Truro Township. The trustees have basically going to be voting on contributing $10,000 to this project for their part of it. While it may not be the same amount as what Franklin County has offered, the reality of it is obviously their contribution because they are very supportive of it because of the connections with Truro Township. The TIF also does not impact any of the services rendered as far as payment for any of the Franklin County services, the libraries, MMRD, the Truro Township Fire Department, and things of that nature as well. But I will answer all the financial questions or other things that are out there that are not technical. I am not the engineer. You do not want me to tell you anything about that, but I'm happy to talk about sidewalks, lightings, and things like that. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to our city engineer, Ryan Andrews.
Thanks, Mayor. First, I want to start just by talking a little bit about the funding source that the city is going after. Obviously, there's a couple different things going on here that the mayor mentioned. TIF revenue from the subdivision development. But what we're here to talk about today particularly is Ohio Public Works Commission funding. That funding source is managed through the state. It's gasoline tax money, and essentially all of the municipalities in and around Central Ohio have an opportunity to compete for funds. And so we have a very lengthy application process that we have to put forward with a lot of detailed questions and answers that we have to provide. And we also have to determine how much we're going to ask from Ohio Public Works for this project. So the project itself extends from Main Street to Broad Street, so it's the full length of Waggoner Road, but we're going to do it in two phases. The first phase is from East Main Street to Priestley Drive, and the second phase is from Priestley Drive up to East Broad Street. And so the grant application that we're talking about today really focuses on the first phase, so about half of the project, and that's about a $7 million project in total. And so we are going to get together here in the next couple weeks and determine how much we're going to ask for from OPWC, but it's probably going to be somewhere in the $2 to $4 million range, so they'll probably be paying for a third to half of the project if we're successful. So part of their process does require us to have a public meeting to inform the public of what we're doing, inform them about the project, and obviously we would like to get feedback as well. I do have some forms here that are just general. Put your name on here if you'd like. You can say that whether or not you support the project, provide comments. Or otherwise, and yeah, if you don't support the project or you don't like it, you're more than welcome to fill out one of these forms. That doesn't hurt us on our application. It just shows that we're getting everybody's opinion and input and feedback. So it's a good thing. So like the mayor mentioned, our OPWC application is due September 13th, and they review the applications, and there's a committee that reviews them and scores them. And then we'll be ranked against all of the other suburbs around Central Ohio. And we'll find out if we're funded on December 17th. And then from there, the project will go into a design phase that'll last a little over a year. And then in March of 2023, we would likely be starting construction on phase one. So it is a lengthy process. It does take a long time to design the project. There's going to be some utility relocation with some of the overhead poles and things like that need to be done. And those types of things generally take a good 6 to 12 months to do. So I will kind of walk through the project now and try to show you on this exhibit up here just some of the details. This is a concept exhibit. It is not a design. It's something that we pulled together looking obviously at the overhead photo of the city, and we've laid out what we think the proposed roadway improvements are going to be. But there's obviously still time to revise, change, and amend things that we see here. So starting here, this is the intersection with East Main Street, so this is the southern limits of the project. North is pointing to this side of the page. And so right here at the intersection, we're looking at adding a drop right-hand turn lane, a dedicated right turn from southbound Waggoner to westbound East Main. So we understand that there's a bit of a congestion problem at times here, and that's part of the process of alleviating that is adding that extra turn lane. The project in general is really widening the road out to 3 lanes to provide that center dual turn lane. Allows people to decelerate if they're making a left-hand turn into a driveway or into a business. At certain points, we'll turn that into a dedicated left-hand turn lane when we're coming into a subdivision or apartment complex or the St. Pius Church and School, just because there's going to be a lot more traffic volume going that direction. But for the most part, this is free for people to get into and make their left-hand turns. And it allows the traffic behind them to continue to proceed down the road without constantly being stopped every time somebody's turning into a driveway. We're going to put curb and gutter on the street. So right now, obviously, it's a 2-lane open ditch roadway, a lot of dips and curves. Some of that can be softened out with the design, but it's still going to generally follow the same alignment that it's on now. But it will be a curbed street with storm sewer. We're looking to do a sidewalk on the west side of the road and a multi-use bike trail on the east side of the road. This will require some modifications to this structure here. This is actually a Franklin County bridge, and part of the reason why they're contributing to the project is that their bridge needs to be lengthened for us to get this extra sidewalk and bike trail across the street. So, as you progress up the road, it really, doesn't change too much. It's a 3-lane road. We're looking at doing a couple enhanced pedestrian crossings. You've probably seen these before where it's a button that has flashing LED lights on it just to alert motorists that there's somebody in the crosswalk wanting to cross the street. So again, a big emphasis on this is trying to make it pedestrian friendly, trying to make people feel safe that they can walk on the sidewalk, because right now it's so narrow and people drive so fast at times that I can't imagine it feels very safe to be a pedestrian out there. So we're trying to create an environment that makes it feel a little bit safer. There is going to be a grass strip and potentially trees could be planted in between the sidewalk and the road and between the bike trail and the road. So there's a little bit of a distance there again to separate the vehicles from the pedestrians and again make pedestrians feel like it's a safer corridor to walk and just to provide a little bit more distance between the cars and the people. So we're looking at a couple of these enhanced pedestrian crossings. Really, we've kind of preliminarily picked some spots where we know that a lot of people might be crossing the street. I understand that this is a school. I'm not sure how much walking traffic there is, but we're looking at putting one there, and again at a couple other places throughout the corridor. If we go to the next page, it shows the rest of the project up to Priestley. I don't know if we can hit, yeah, there you go. So, as you continue up to Priestley Drive, again, a dedicated left turn lane into the subdivision here. And then at Priestley, we are looking at adding a traffic signal and a little bit of an enhancement into the entrance to the subdivision to, again, create a dedicated left lane, a dedicated right lane, traffic signal, looking at putting potentially a landscape median in there, again, to kind of, calm the traffic and channel the traffic in and out of the intersection a little bit better. And so the end of the Phase 1 project we're projecting is just right here on the north side of the Priestley intersection. And then from there, in a future application we're looking to do these in consecutive years. So Phase 2 would just sort of be a year behind Phase 1. We would look to do the rest of the project from this point up to East Broad Street. One thing that I did forget to mention is that we are going to add street lighting to the corridor too. So there'll be decorative post-op style street lighting, in the corridor. It's again going to feel a little bit more like a neighborhood collector. When we look at the traffic out there right now, it supports this 3-lane road, but it's also, it's a pretty corridor, and there's a lot of, there's a lot of nature. We don't want to turn it into an expressway, but we want it to be able to handle the traffic that it sees, without, we don't need multiple lanes. It has about 12,000 is the average daily traffic on Waggoner Road. Typically, we look to do a 3-lane section like this when a road's getting to that 15 to 20,000 vehicles a day limit. And so we're just below that. So I think it's appropriate, but it's not overkill. That's what we're trying. We're trying to still kind of preserve some of the natural feel of the corridor in the area because it's a real pretty drive right now. Yeah, so what we do, whenever we do a roadway design, we project the traffic out 20 years. So for a roadway design that we do today in 2021, we're going to try to project what we think the traffic's going to be on the road in 2041. And we're going to design the road to that. So how do we do that? We look at historical trends in how the city has grown and just in population. And then we also look at things like developments that are coming in that aren't there now. So we do look at the MI development and other developments that are occurring on Waggoner Road and factor those in. But again, that's going to get us, up to probably over 15,000 average daily traffic, but not up over that 20,000 threshold. Typically, if you go wider than that, or if you go with multiple lanes, like if you look at East Main Street, it's 4 lanes with a center turn lane for most of it, so it's really a 5-lane road. East Main Street has 3 times the traffic that Waggoner Road has. So there's a big difference there in traffic volume. No. I'm not even sure where are the condos going. Oh, okay. Okay. How many condos are there? Okay. I haven't studied that. I really don't know much about the condo project, so I think it's still in Planning Commission, or is it through there? Right, okay. Okay. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
The biggest reason for the traffic light at Priestley is a number of the residents that live off of Priestley have requested it, and specifically the landscape architecture that they put in the center lane was designed. I'm sure if you've been on Priestley from Waggoner Road, what ends up happening is people who are turning in, whether they're coming from the north or the south, they're already going at an accelerated speed, and so they get onto Priestley, and they don't slow down when they get onto Priestley. And so the idea of having that architectural barrier in between is supposed to remind them to slow down. In addition to the traffic light, the idea is that they're going to be able to come to a complete stop knowing that they'll get a turn arrow or something, or a red light that will ultimately turn green into that particular thing. As far as the rest of it, and I know Director Dorman, who's in the back, I know he can talk about this. There's ways that you can flash, and you've seen where you have X amount of feet or X amount of yards away from where the stoplight is. It will say light is light is flashing. If you've been on Broad Street, prior to that location by where, where is it? Right by the church that's on that particular area, they'll have a flashing saying that it's coming up. by that particular area.
Yeah, I mean, we'll look at site distances and verify that people can see the stoplight from far enough away to slow down, and if they can't, then we'll put something in there, an advanced warning feature that says, stop when flashing, or
And we've
light
also,
ahead is red.
yeah, we've also talked about, and we're at the early stages about getting a consistent speed limit from Broad Street to Main Street all the way around, so that way you don't have 35 in some parts and 45 in another.
Yeah, I think that's an important part of the project, is that we are planning on trying to make the entire corridor 35 miles an hour. Correct. That's the plan. Yeah, we'll be replacing that. Yeah, it'll probably be replaced in its entirety. Mm. Mm. Yeah.
Will there be anything for the east side to, if the roadway is widened and there's still a significant change in elevation, will there be anything to protect pedestrians or bicyclists from leaving the path?
Yeah, so, again, a lot of these details have not been worked out yet because this is a conceptual exhibit. But in our cost estimating and in our budgeting, we've factored in a very large quantity of retaining wall because we know that these grade changes exist and that it's not going to be possible to grade them back, that we're going to need retaining wall. And so as a general rule of thumb, whenever we put a retaining wall up against a sidewalk or a path, we're going to put a fence and a railing on top of it, obviously. And then if we have to bring, sometimes we'll have to bring the path closer to the road and minimize or eliminate that grass strip. And when we do that, we will also probably put a barrier between the road and the pedestrians. So there will be either fencing or barrier or wall on either side. It's going to, yeah, typically what we do, and I mean, there are a lot of options for those types of things. In an area like this, what I would probably recommend is just a steel-backed timber guardrail, which is a little bit more decorative. It's something that's going to be stained wood and able to withstand impacts from vehicles. So I would probably recommend something like that. But I mean, I'm not talking about like a noise wall or anything like that, like what you would see on the freeway. Just a, 42-inch tall barrier that's going to provide some safety for the pedestrians. Yes.
Couple questions. One is there's quite a few mature trees along Waggoner now, fairly close to the road. I would imagine a pretty high percentage of those will have to come out to allow for the multi-purpose path and the sidewalk. Do you have an idea of what percentage of those trees are coming out?
No, not yet.
And I'm just wondering what that pretty road's going to look like when all those trees are taken out.
Yeah, I think that, and one of the things that we'll evaluate in detailed design is tree planting plans and tree protection. So if we have the opportunity to avoid a tree or save a tree, we're going to try to do that. But there's always a trade-off when it comes to trees, right? Do I shift the road, go to those lengths, and acquire a right-of-way from the person on the other side so I can push the road onto their property so I can save a tree on this side? That generally doesn't happen. Because the cost far outweighs the reward of keeping the tree. But we will attempt to keep as many trees as we can, and then I imagine we're going to look at a tree planting plan and a landscaping plan to replace at least as many, if not more, of the trees that get cut down.
And along the lines of landscaping, for those developments that are off of Waggoner Road, like Quarry Cliff, Jordan Crossing, the one off of Priestley, they all have landscape in front.
Yeah.
You know, it could be wall, it could be trees, it could be iron gates. What do we anticipate happening with that landscape when this widening project happens?
So at a lot of those locations, the road's already widened out to 3 lanes. So if you think about it, the improvements could very likely fit within the footprint of the existing roadway area. So that's kind of number one. I think the second thing I'd say to that is when we encounter that type of situation, we always try to avoid it if we can, or try to figure out a way to work around it, to preserve it if we can. If we cannot, then typically we'll work with the homeowners association or whoever owns that parcel to relocate it or rebuild something in its place, modify that landscaping or brick wall or stone wall or whatever it is. The project pays for that. Uh-huh.
In development, and I have extremely large concerns about how far this is coming,
Yeah.
you know, into, I mean, it won't come directly into our immediate yard because we have large lots where I live,
Uh-huh.
but I'm all about recreational paths, but I don't want it on my patio.
Yeah, no, I completely understand. You know, when we look at this, we're always looking at setback distances from front porches and yards and things like that, and we try to take those things into consideration. You know, if you're not right up on the road, that's a good thing.
Right.
Because then our path won't be right on your patio. If there is, like community landscaping and an entrance feature with landscaping there now, we'll either preserve it or we'll replace it with something in kind.
Okay.
And that'll be something that will be included in the project. We're not gonna ask the homeowners association or the residents to pay for that.
Can you guys just wait because they can't hear you online without the mic?
You take that, I'll take this.
I live in the same development there at Torrent Crossing.
Okay.
And my concern is, you're not sure how much will come out of that, but what is the distance, planned distance from the east side, the edge of Waggoner Road, east side, to the far east of the multipurpose path? How many feet would that be? All
From
the way
the
up?
east edge of the existing
Yeah,
road
the existing
to the
road.
future edge of path.
Yes.
I mean, it's gonna vary in different places. I couldn't give you an exact number
reason
unless we
I was
look at an
trying to-
exact place.
I would like to measure that
Yeah.
off to see exactly how much of that area is
Yeah.
going to be gone.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, typically, I would, as a general rule of thumb, if I was gonna throw something out there, is the road 2 lanes or 3 lanes in this area
2
we're
lanes.
talking about? It's 2 lanes.
2 lanes.
Okay, so if I'm looking at the east edge of a 2-lane road, that's probably 10 feet to the east of the center line of that road. Our future road's gonna be 3 lanes, so it's gonna be 18 feet to the edge, so it's gonna be eight more feet to get to the new edge of road. Are you on the bike path side or the
Yes,
sidewalk side?
bike path.
Bike path side. So then we
So
would
that's
have
8 feet.
very likely a 2 to 3 foot grass strip. If we want to plant trees in it, we got to have it at least 3 feet.
Okay, so
So
that's
that would be 11
11
feet, and then the path is 8 feet wide. So you're looking at 19 feet maybe from the edge of the road
Okay.
now.
So we could safely say 20 feet. We can
Yeah,
measure
I'd say
that off.
that's safe. It would definitely be probably inside of 20 feet.
Yeah.
That's a tough question to answer too, because it does change everywhere across the corridor. So the right-of-way, obviously there's existing public right-of-way out there that the roadway is in. And there are certainly going to be several locations along the corridor where we're going to need to acquire additional right-of-way to make this work, because there's not 18 feet off the edge of the road
Right.
that's in the public domain right now.
A lot of areas like that.
So that's another process that's going to take a lot of time. Our plan right now is to start preliminary engineering in October, November timeframe, and by spring of next year to be able to start reaching out to residents individually to talk to them if we have needs, and to sit down and look at the drawings and talk through what's going on at every parcel. And then if we need to acquire right-of-way, we'll go into a discussion on that and talk about values and so on and so forth.
Does the, now I forgot my question. Don't laugh at me. Okay. Um, Does the sidewalk, why, you have a sidewalk on one side, a multi-purpose path on the other, and I know that our foot traffic's very low right now on Waggoner, and it is a scenic country road. You won't have a crowd of people going up and down the road. Why not have one multi-purpose path, and rather than one on each side? Why do we have to have two?
Well, there's always a challenge when you do that, when you put a path just on one side of the road, because there are residents on the other side. And we're trying to provide, ADA compliant pathways in the public right of way.
Yeah.
That's a requirement of the city. And so if we put it on one side of the road and not the other, there could be justification to make a claim that we're not providing, equal coverage to both sides of the road and not giving people on both sides of the road equal opportunities to have access to the pedestrian.
Now, will the project cover the cost for sidewalks, because this isn't a Brookside lot, that we're talking 2 acres maybe of frontage?
Now we're going to charge all the residents for the sidewalk.
Okay, well.
Just kidding.
Well,
Just kidding.
which car is yours out there? We'll take care of you, buddy. No. I'm just
scared.
kidding, I'm kidding.
No, the project will pay for everything,
It'll
including the
pay
sidewalk.
for everything.
Yes. All right.
So specifically, the Quarry Cliff subdivision cul-de-sac, they have sidewalks that are not currently connected to Wagner Road.
Yeah, we're going to extend it down to pick those up. We're not going to leave little gaps.
Well, this isn't a small gap.
How far down is it?
My entire lot frontage.
Okay. We'll look at it. Are you like the first house in, or?
Yes, sir. And
Okay.
we're actually not a part of the Quarry Cliff Homeowners Association.
Okay.
However, we are the first. We are 1050 Wagner Road.
Okay, gotcha. Okay,
Thanks, you too.
we'll take a look at it. We don't want to leave gaps. If we're going to do this, we have one shot to do it. We're getting outside funding to help support the project. We're going to, if there's an opportunity for us to close a gap, we're going to do it. Because it's, in the grand scheme of things, not too significant.
Can you tell us what's happening as far as utilities with this project? I mean, you mentioned the storm drain. What else is going to be impacted?
So, well, from a public utility side, obviously we have sanitary sewer, storm sewer, and water main. The sanitary sewer is not going to be impacted at all with this project because it's really not in the roadway for the majority of the project. The water line will be replaced and upgraded as part of the project. So when we do that, we build the new water line before we take the old water line out of service. So there will be minor outages, and we'll make our contractor do that at night. So it's one of those things that sounds like a big deal, but we really make a lot of effort in design and in construction to minimize the impacts to residents. So that'll happen. On the private utility side, the overhead poles, some of them are probably going to have to move, but again, without getting into detailed engineering, it's hard for me to say which ones are going to need to move. So that's a process that gets handled by the utility companies. They do that basically for us as part of the project. So AEP will move the power poles, and everybody else who's below them, which is usually the telephone and cable companies, will move as well at their cost. And I can't tell you how many of those are going to move right now, but it's a process that takes about a year for us to really dig into and coordinate with them on. And we'll try to get started on it as soon as probably February or March of next year. Now, yeah, it would be nice, but that would probably cost more than the roadway project. So, not likely to happen. Gas main will probably need to be replaced. We haven't started talking to Columbia Gas yet. They won't even talk to us until we start detailed engineering. So we're going to coordinate with them early on, but that'll be something that they will do themselves, but we'll need to kind of guide them and coordinate with them on where to put it and how deep to make it so that it's deep enough for the project, so we don't run into it when we do our project.
I have a question regarding the crosswalks. I think the signalized crosswalks that you have designated here are a good idea. My concern is with widening the road, creating the turn lanes and so forth, we're creating a potential opportunity for people to go faster. And my experience on Main Street, for example, at the crosswalk across from Tempe Taco is people just don't pay attention to it. And so are there potentially alternatives for crossing the road similar to the underpass crosswalk just across the road here at Main Street behind the old bank? I don't know where that would go necessarily, but is something like that a potential option for crossing what will continue to be a very busy road?
Well, an underpass type crosswalk's probably not real feasible because you have to get down below the road, and the expense of putting that in is pretty extraordinary. There are other things that could be done besides just the LED flashing lights. There's an actual type of signal that's strictly for pedestrians that will stop it. Traffic is mandated to stop at it. It's not, the flashy lights are nice, but they are a warning to the drivers. They're not you must stop. It's not an enforceable stop. So we could look at it's called a hawk signal, which it has 3 lights on it and red lights that flash, and then when it becomes solid, the vehicles are required to stop. So we could look at doing that in one location or 2 locations instead of the rapid flashing beacon sign, which is what's there at Del Taco and Prost. So, we could look at that. I'll talk to our traffic guys just to see what their thoughts are on whether or not those are good locations for it, and we might consider doing something like that.
With the addition of the sidewalks, I think we will, especially with the new subdivisions going in. And being able to cross over and connect into the other parts of the community, particularly downtown here, I think is going to be valuable. But crossing that road is a real concern.
Yeah, and I think the other thing about that road that's different about a lot of other places is that there's so many curves and so many hills. And, maybe having, that hawk signal sticks up much higher. It's much more noticeable. It sits over the road. Something like that, might be beneficial when you don't really, the vehicle's coming around a curve and then there's somebody in the crosswalk. Obviously we want to avoid that type of scenario. So we'll look at all of those things in detailed design.
I have another statement on the frontage. By the looks of your thing here, my front porch at Coronado Woods is the closest thing to the road. Right now it's about 45 feet. What's this grass strip and sidewalk? Is that going to go more to how's that going to work out? And I also don't see the trees that are there existing.
Yeah. Well, I don't know if the trees are just in the photo. We didn't color over them or draw over them with lines on the drawing. Looking at your area, I think that's something that we just have to evaluate when we get a little further along. The roadway is pretty much going to be centered on the existing roadway. There might be an opportunity in some locations, like where you're at in particular, there's quite a wide right-of-way over by the VFW on the opposite side of the street. So there might be an opportunity for us to push the road a little bit to that side there to minimize the impacts to the residents on the other side. So again, when there's opportunities to do things like that where, pushing it to the other side a little bit doesn't really impact anybody, which it's very rare that we run into that situation, but this might be the one location where we actually do. We'll look into those things and see if we can taper the road over to the other side a little bit more to preserve some more of that frontage.
Also, you mentioned gas lines. Would Coronado Woods be available for gas service?
Well, yeah. What happens if the gas company relocates You're asking if you'll lose service?
We don't have gas now.
Oh, okay. That's an issue for Columbia Gas to look at. You know, they may look at that and see that they have an underserved area there and decide to extend something into it. But that's their private entity and that's their business.
Go ahead, Stacy.
Oh, there we go. Thank you. I have two questions. One is, I see that there's a proposed concrete sidewalk. Have you looked at other materials that might last a little longer than concrete? Because as we know with sidewalks, with concrete, they crack, they become uneven. And I've seen some where they use different material for the sidewalk instead of just concrete, just for the longevity of it. And the second one is funding. Can you go into a little more detail about funding, how this is going to be funded to those who are watching and those who are here in the audience?
Yeah.
You get the first question.
Okay. I guess, to respond to that, concrete is I guess the gold standard of sidewalk and has been for centuries. I know it cracks. Obviously, it's subjective to weathering. So is asphalt pavement. If you look at the typical lifespan of a sidewalk, it's probably something close to 40 years. If you look at a typical lifespan of an asphalt pavement, it's probably
We did discuss a little bit about the process by which the OPWC grant will help fund this. The other option is going to be, again, we mentioned earlier, TIF funding, which is the property taxes from the MI development and eventually the other condominiums that will be put in place on Waggoner Road. Those TIFs will help provide the funding for this particular project, and we organize the TIF funding in a way that when the development fills out, that money has to be kind of like locked in and already locked in. So we're not going to be spending anything until we know that those homes are built and those properties have been assessed. So we have to meet a certain threshold, which is ultimately for the first phase of this is actually getting through what they call phase 1 for MI. Just to give you an idea, they have already started work on phase 2 in MI. So they have already looked through and they're confident in the sales for phase 1. I believe when we had the grand opening 2 weeks ago, they were already setting up meetings with, I believe they have 30 different individuals that had put money down on a plot for the MI development already, and they don't even have a spec home up yet. I do anticipate that the phase 3 of the MI development will probably be put in play by the end of this year, assuming things remain consistent. So that money is going to be generated. I also mentioned earlier that the TIF money is based on the $310,000 average price of those particular homes at 354 homes. And then when you add all the particulars in, it approximately came to around $22 million just specifically for that. Now, however, because of the property values going up and because of the values of the homes, they're going to be at an average price of $330,000. And I'm not going to break out the calculator, but obviously if we started at 310 and the median price or low price is going to be 330, it will generate significant more revenue than the $22 million that was already earmarked for this. And the entirety of this project is going to be about $17 million. I've always joked, because I trust the engineers, this is probably ultimately going to be a $20 million project just because everything becomes more expensive as time goes on. And so even with a $20 million project that allows for a number of other improvements as well, the original TIF at the 310 level does cover that, not including Waggoner Road, not including what the new property values will be in there. And all of it, again, is phased. I did want to make one comment about the pathways, the bike paths, multi-purpose paths. One of the things that we're trying to do is make Reynoldsburg significantly more connected without having to go on Broad Street and Main Street. And you may have seen, or you may have not, there's going to be a West Licking firehouse that is going to be constructed on Taylor Road, almost kind of catty corner to where their sub-service station is right now. And part of the agreement for that land was that the West Licking Fire is going to actually be building a multi-purpose path from Taylor Road that will connect in a pathway through the nature all the way actually to the middle school, Waggoner Road, or actually junior high school, Waggoner Road Junior High, which will then ultimately connect to an improved sidewalk sidewalk path, and if any of you have ever been on Wagner Road's campus, you know that there's basically nothing where that ditch is. Some of the funds with an agreement that I've made with the school district, some of those funds from the TIF are going to be used to actually increase the sidewalk capability for that as well. So in essence, when this is all said and done, if you live off Taylor Road, you can hop onto that multi-purpose path, travel all the way down to Wagner Road, and then connect on the Wagner Road side, moving back and forth along that road all the way up to the New Albany corridor, all the way down to Canal Winchester. But the important point that you brought up is crossing the street on the other side. That is something that we're trying to figure out what the best option is, because ultimately what we would like to do is for people to be able to walk on that path and then get across safely into the other side, especially with all the development that we're putting in Old Town as far as our restaurants and boutique shopping and things like that. Not everybody's going to want to walk that far. A lot of people will want to drive, but at the same time, if you can ride a bike or walk on that path and do it safely, that is ultimately the goal, eventually connecting into Old Town, which will then connect into JFK, which will connect into Civic, and then all the other park networks all the way throughout. So this is a very large part of a larger scheme for all of Central Ohio to make everything as connected as possible, either by foot or by bike. I hope that answers your question, Councilman.
Back to the question about the sidewalk, what I was hoping to get an answer from you was recycle. You use recyclable like tires and stuff to go along instead of just concrete. That way, those who like to run, and they'll tell you that concrete is hard. Concrete is hard on their knees. Something that gives a little give is what I was looking for. More like a recyclable used sidewalk.
Yeah. Obviously we're putting the asphalt trail on the opposite side of the road, which I'm a runner. I would much prefer to run on asphalt than on concrete. And there's a lot of recycled material in asphalt. Obviously, a lot of roads get recycled right back into asphalt. So there is some benefit there to the environment of reusing some existing materials. Any asphalt pavement has a little bit of that. If you're talking about more of like a soft surface, like what you'll see on like a high school track or, in the new playground over here at JFK, that kind of a surface is ridiculously expensive. And it would be very cost prohibitive to do something like that on a large scale on a trail that long.
I lived in Reynoldsburg.
But you have to hold it.
Okay. I've lived in Reynoldsburg for about 18 years, and I noticed that no semis are allowed on Graham Road, but yet we can come right up Wagner Road. I don't understand the purpose. If it's not okay for a semi to be on Graham Road, why is it okay to be on Wagner Road? You go up to Reynoldsburg, you go up to Taylor Station, you got a cement company up there, you got Limited, so you've got semis up there tearing up that road. It just seems like, how much more can you punish the people that live on Wagner Road? You beat us to death. Now it's just one more thing. Let's just let semis go up on top of this on top. I mean, let's just beat up one road, not our road too. We got nothing left.
Yeah,
Are we going to allow semis after we spend all this thousands and millions of dollars? We're going to allow semis to come up Wagner?
Well, the roadway pavement will definitely be designed to support that type of traffic. If it goes on the road.
Evidently Graham Road doesn't allow that, so they must have found a reason.
I don't know the rationale behind what roads in the city are identified as truck routes and which are prohibited. I don't know if anybody else has the history on that.
I mean, I can speak a little bit about that. I mean, typically, as Ryan said, to sign a road no trucks, you really have to be able to prove that structurally it can't support that. And I'll be honest, sometimes signs were just put up to appease people that complain, but the actual enforcement of it is probably not valid to write somebody up for that. It would be very hard to prove that is not valid roadway to support truck traffic. So.
Well, I don't know. I know Limited's got more money than I do. I know the concrete company, they're tearing that road up for the concrete trucks to come in and out all day. It's just a shame that we're going to spend millions of dollars to beautify Wagner Road, and then we're going to still allow semis to come up. It doesn't make much sense to me. And I'll tell you, I'm a bike person. I ride a bike quite a bit. And I tell you, the day that I want to ride a bike on Waggoner Road will be the day that I go on suicide watch. I'm going to tell you, I don't care how wide you make that. When cars are going 55, 60 mile an hour and you're within 3 foot of us, that's suicide.
I think one of the things that is hard, just, specific to the speed comment, is that Wagner Road comes in and out of the city multiple times.
It
And in
does,
fact,
right.
a higher percentage of it is outside of the city limits than inside. So from an enforcement standpoint, it becomes a challenge for the Reynoldsburg Police Department. And the Franklin County Sheriff's Department doesn't spend time there. So, right. So this project is going to enable the city to enforce the speed on the entire roadway. It's going to allow the city to set the speed limit on the entire roadway. So that's part of the goal and part of the objective for the project is to either annex the entire roadway. If we find that we can't do that, we'll acquire it through a maintenance agreement with Franklin County. Either way. And then we'll set the speed limit at 35 miles an hour, and the Reynoldsburg Police Department will be able to patrol.
That's a great question, but why 35? It's 25 on Graham. I've been rear-ended twice on Wagner Road. I've lost 2 mailboxes on Wagner Road. Don't know, and these were 8x8s. I'd love to see the car that hit them because the whole front end's got to be gone. And if you would stand 20 feet south of my house, you'll find every car that comes down Wagner Road is 2.5 foot over the center line. I mean, and they're running 55 mile an hour, and then they go on past, and they slow down as soon as they hit St. Pius. But it's amazing. I mean, if we want to raise money for Reynoldsburg, come sit in my driveway, and you could write 100 tickets a day. It just seems to me like that. You know what? We hide our motorcycles behind churches. Come out and sit in my driveway. You can have my whole driveway.
Unfortunately, as I've learned since I've been in office, the revenue generated from tickets is not nearly as beneficial to the city of Reynoldsburg as maybe it's been perceived in other communities. I know that there's some, without naming names, where we all know that if you go 1 mile over the speed limit, that you're going to get there. That the revenue that we get with it, honestly, when I was looking at it, I was like, wow, I was kind of disappointed. I thought it would have been a little bit more than that. So that I get the idea, but I do think enforcement has to be done. It's enforcement on there, it's enforcement on Priestley, it's enforcement on Taylor, it's an enforcement in school zones. It's all of those different things that have to happen, but at the same time, if we have that 35 mile an hour speed limit, that helps alleviate some of those concerns. We even talked about lowering the speed limit on Priestley until I found out that we are prohibited from lowering it. I was thinking, wouldn't it be nice if we could put Priestley at a 15 mile an hour, so that way when the people are going, what the average is based on what RPD has provided on the information, which is about 32 miles an hour, that's there, even with the blind ones that nobody knows that they're taking speeds, that's what it comes out to. Even at 32 miles an hour, all right, well, at 15, now all of a sudden you're actually, having a big gap between, a 15 mile an hour speed limit and a speed of 32 as opposed to 25 and 32, which tends to get looked at the other way. We just can't do that. We're not allowed to. I blame the State House.
I think one thing, is this on? I can't do it. Okay. I think one thing, we need to talk about too is when we first started looking at this design, obviously the biggest thing was safety. Not only for vehicles, but pedestrians as well. You're not seeing a lot of people walk on that area because there's no walkways right now. When we put the curb and gutter will actually make the road feel a little narrower when you put it in there. Right now, it's like you said, open ditch. It feels like a freeway as you drive through there. But once we put that curb and gutter in, that'll make the road feel, although it's a little wider, it'll make it actually feel narrower once you drive it. Once we do some trees through there as well. And the big thing we haven't talked about is a traffic light right in the middle of Wagner now. So people, they might be able to accelerate, but they're going to have to slow down when they come up to that signal or stop, which will help a lot too. It'll provide some gaps. I think the biggest thing we're going to look at for crosswalks is the signalized intersections are obviously going to be a no-brainer. That's where we can get people across safely. The other ones we're going to have to study and see if they really work for visibility reasons and clear zone and all that other stuff that we have to take into consideration. But when we started looking at this, the real big factors were safety was obviously the biggest one. When we put the curb in, that'll help with drainage. There's a lot of slick spots there in the winter. My guys talk about always plowing the bottom of the hill and cars always getting stuck down there. And then the street lights will make a huge difference as well. Once we add those vertical elements, trees and street lights, that also makes the road feel a little narrower too and will change people's perception on how they drive. The one thing Ryan talked about too was the leisure path and the sidewalk. He has a great team of landscape architects on there. They're going to be handling kind of that aesthetic design. If you drive down maybe Muirfield, Avery Road, you kind of get that feel where it's kind of the same way. The houses are set back, big lots. There's a leader trail that kind of winds around. The biggest thing I can say is if you're willing to work with us, we'll work with you. If we can provide, additional screening, if we can get a leisure trail around a tree, we're going to do that. But obviously we need help from residents in allowing us maybe just an easement or something to save something that you really value. And we need to know that. That's what this meeting's about, is you telling us what, is important to you. So when we do these entryways around your subdivisions or we go along the front of your house, we can do some of those enhancements. Maybe it's a fence, maybe it's some additional trees. But our goal is to really keep that agrarian feel as you go through there. We don't want to lose that. We love that. That's something we always talked about keeping. So hopefully we're done. I think you'll have a really nice day.
Yeah, and as the project moves forward, there will be other times for us to get together. Once we have detailed design progressed to a certain point, we'll do an open house type meeting. We'll have more details. We'll actually be able to look at your front yards or side yards or whatever the case may be and show you where the road's going. We can measure exactly how far that edge of bike path is up to your front door if we want to. And then, again, talk about screening, talk about, landscaping or other things that we might be able to do. And that would be the time if, you have that favorite tree in the front yard and you want us to try to preserve it, we can talk about those types of things then.
Yeah. I got to jump in on that one. We're actually in the process, council approved, actually syncing all of our traffic lights on Main Street from Waggoner all the way down to Bryce Road. So the idea would be that it will allow for an easier flow of traffic from those points, with the exception of making, Waggoner Road, which is obviously heavily traveled, Lancaster, and things like that. So that way the lights are synced up and it'll be all wirelessly connected. So that has been approved. That has been set for council. They will be doing their traffic study for that part of it once school is officially back in session, because there's no point in doing it now while school is out. So they'll do that. And then in addition to that, there'll also be what is called an Opticom safety system. So maybe you've heard of this. Fire, EMS, police, when they're on a way, they actually have the ability to flick a switch and it'll all be greened out the entire way. So that way it reduces the likelihood of any kind of impact incidents in there all the way across. So those things are being done and those are already in the books right now. So a year from now, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, those things are going to be done. We figured if we're redoing all of Main Street as we've already seen so far, but whether it's paving or in Old Town, let's go ahead and make the full thing and get the traffic taken care of and get the sync and the safety aspects all the way.
I think it's very curious to listen to this after 45 years, when I used to walk with my husband and 5 children to church every Sunday on Waggoner Road, and maybe just a couple cars would pass by. Things have really changed. I think that Reynoldsburg made a terrible mistake many years ago, and of course we can't do anything about it, but the Regional Planning Commission 43 years ago suggested a bypass, and because we had city council people who were landowners in that area, they decided against it, and so Waggoner Road and Graham Road have become the bypass. And now it's also Taylor Road. And the reason that it's 25 miles an hour on Graham Road is because of the 2 schools there. I don't know what Graham Road is called anymore, but anyway, it's a school of sorts. And then there's a school at the Methodist Church with children, so that's a speed consideration. And well, the problem on Waggoner Road is that the schools are a half a mile back from the road. And so, you do have a flashing light and you do have a light at the Waggoner Road Middle School and Junior High. But my concern is more about the condos that are to be built close to Main Street. And you represent the M&I Homes. Is that correct, sir?
This service director for the city.
Oh, you are? All right. Well, I'm sorry I'm late. I tried to watch this on my phone.
Quite all right. We appreciate you coming.
Yes, I tried to watch this on my phone, and I couldn't see anything. I think this is too small to see on a phone. Even when I tried to zoom it, it wouldn't let me. So I had to rush down here. I'm very, very concerned. It was my understanding all these years, having gleaned a lot from the Planning and Zoning Regional Planning Commission many years ago, that Wagner Road is indeed an Ohio byway and has to remain 2 lanes as it extends all the way up to Clark State Road. It is an Ohio byway. And there is an Ohio law that says byways can be no more than 2 lanes wide. Now, you can double check that. Maybe the state has rescinded things, and that we live in this age of rescinding and taking everything back, don't we? Anyway, so
I believe another resident actually brought that up, and so we actually investigated that, actually going to the Ohio Byways site from the state of Ohio, and Wagner Road has not been ever a listed byway in the state of Ohio.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, because we did look at it. I think that's, yes, exactly like what you said. I think that that was probably a consideration where maybe someone was putting a no truck sign version where it wasn't exactly the accurate thing. So, but we did look into that to make sure before we started even really getting into, because I think that was 6 to 8 months ago, I think, is that when we had that conversation? Because again, when that was brought up before, we had to make sure, because obviously we didn't want to put all our eggs in one basket and then find out that that would prohibit any of this other, any of the work going on.
All right. Well, I'm very dubious, along with many people in this room, about adding so many more human beings and at times 1.5 cars on that road. I think it's almost insane. And I would not like to see the city make the same mistake about honoring proposed roadways in favor of expediency here. And it was my understanding that we came to a city council meeting maybe 2 years ago, and condos at that location were turned down. And I thought it was a fait accompli. And then all of a sudden, magically, during the COVID, when I'm trying desperately to listen to the meeting and I cannot on my phone, all of a sudden there's a new development there on Wagner Road. It just is amazing.
The original development that was defeated was actually multifamily apartments. And then when the rezoning did come in, it was actually zoned to single-family residence, attached and detached. The condominiums that are in question that are going in on Wagner Road are owner-occupied and are considered.
Partially.
No, they're completely owner-occupied on Wagner Road. Completely, 100% owner-occupied, that will have a homeowners association making sure that all of those rules are followed, yes. They're not going to be 3-story apartments. They are 3-story townhomes with a garage on the first floor and then the 2 floors above it. But they are all the single units. I'd have to see what the difference is between. I mean, they're going to be looking similar to it, but there are breaks between.
In Ohio, it's dense living, compact living, high living. Don't use up space. Give an apartment with 564 square feet and call it a luxury apartment. People in Reynoldsburg do not go for this muck. We are not in building and whatever going on Taylor Road. My little ranch house have 1,200 square feet. Housing coming into Reynolds. Very poor community. Congested living is not healthy.
Thank you for your comments.
I want to bring up one thing real fast too, as we talked about the MI subdivision. I think most people have probably driven by there once or many times already and seen the landscaping, the pond, the things that are done like that. The city, when we get development, we require the developer to put in the improvements like the leisure path in front of there and the fencing and all that. MI, because of the road being in limbo right now and the design not being finalized, they actually put a large amount of money in escrow with the city that we will then use to build those improvements along the frontage of their property. So we're not using city money to build that. They've already put the money in. We're going to be using that to do any kind of improvements, including maybe a turn lane and other things. The same thing will happen with the condominium project now we have not reviewed their plan. They have zoning approval right now, but we have not reviewed any kind of engineering plans relating to that project. When we get to that, we'll look into the traffic a little bit more. We'll also talk about the leisure path and things that are also going to be required on them to put in as well. So, anytime you see a development occur, we always ask the developer to put that in. So you'll see that happen on Rose Hill too. There's Rose Hill, by the school, there's a development going on right now. They're putting a path along the frontage of there that'll cross over to the sidewalk on the other side. So.
Multifamily domiciles than neighboring suburbs. We have more than our neighboring suburbs. And I would kind of like to call a halt to that for a while and let the other suburbs catch up to our esteemed position.
I think if we can return back to any other questions specific to this project for the public hearing, I'd be happy to speak with any residents about any development questions or multifamily living afterwards. I want to be respectful of everyone's time.
Would you mind reiterating the break ground timeline and then the duration of phase one?
Yeah, sure. So the design for phase one, you said the timeline for the grant too? Okay, gotcha. Yeah, so the phase one project will probably start most likely around March of 2023. It will take that full year, that full construction year. Typically, things wind down in the November timeframe because of weather, depending on where the project is. I'm not going to say that it's going to 100% be done by November of 23. A lot of times we end up getting to that point and find that, obviously the last things that you do, like planting grass, that doesn't go real well in November. So some of the final cleanup items will probably happen the following spring. I would say March of 23 through, May, June of 24, with obviously a break during the winter season. And then phase two would begin right as that's ending, and then extend, again through 24 and into 25.
I thought phase one was from Broad to Priestley, and that's what's on this sheet. Why is there a change now?
It shouldn't be
What
on.
sheet are you looking at?
It should be Main Street.
It's from Maine.
No, the reason why we decided to go with because there are more serious traffic issues on the Main Street, from Main Street to Priestley, than there are traffic issues from Priestley to Broad Street.
Yeah.
And to provide the most immediate relief in that area that's why we wanted to have and flip it, because obviously the most congested areas we talked about before is that Waggoner and Main area, and we wanted to make sure we tried to address that as early as possible.
Yeah, that label on the map is wrong. At one point, we were looking at the other section being phase one, and we were looking at Broad to start with. But because we're doing the East Main Street improvements, it just made sense to continue from Maine up to Priestley, and then finish it all the way up to the city limits with Columbus, up there at the Broad intersection as phase two.
A piggyback on the question about how this would be phased out. I know the condos are approved. That's a fait accompli. Is there any chance that we can have the road improvements done before they start the construction on the condos? The traffic is already so unsafe and congested now. My concern is if we add the condos to that before we make the road improvements, we're really going to be hurting.
The best information that we've been given from the company is that their primary focus right now is the completion of the Rose Hill development. And so as that progresses, depending on how long that takes, and for them to sell that particular facility out, only when that particular part is done will then they shift focus into Waggoner Road. So the timeline, if I'm just guessing with them, where they're at right now and how long it's going to take them to build out, we're probably still a year to 18 months away from the Rose Hill development being completed, which means at that point in time, then the process would start at Wagner Road, which at that point, it would be X amount of months to get that engineering process started before you would actually see any build out there, which would probably be at that point in time, 18 months from now is going to be coinciding with when construction on this is already started. So they would probably either be working almost at the same time or they would start after the construction on Wagner Road improvements would begin in the first place, depending on weather, sales, and things of that nature. But I do know that they have mentioned to us that they do not plan on starting Wagner Road until the Rose Hill facilities are built and sold out.
Can I ask a question? Okay. For those of us that live in Truro Township versus the city of Reynoldsburg, is there compensation for our easement? Because, so will somebody, how does that work? Do you print a list or come to the house or we come here? How does that work?
I think what we've talked about in the past is that once the engineering is done and we have an idea of how much of the space that we're looking at is that I would like to have a personal visit so I can sit down and talk with you about it.
You don't want to see my office.
Oh, no, I've seen it on Zoom. We're all good if it's the
Oh,
same
God,
one,
it's
so.
nasty.
No, I think that at that point in time, I think honestly, I know at times Franklin County has done that, but Director Dorman and I have talked about it because this project is obviously important to me for a number of reasons. I would like to just be able to sit down. Now, if you don't want to sit down with me specifically, I get that too. You don't have to laugh that hard, Mary. But if that's the case, then obviously Director Dorman or one of the other city representatives would be there. But that's something, as big of an important project as that is, I would like to be as much of a part of that as possible. So that way I can hear what your concerns are just as quickly as I can.
That's an yeah, that's an important question. So, as the mayor just mentioned, and Ryan mentioned earlier, is we're going to have survey crews out there soon. They're going to be kind of walking along the properties, finding pins. As Ryan said, the right-of-way is kind of all over the place there. The nice thing about this, hopefully in the end, is maybe we'll get some consistency with that with the roadway. Our goal is to do everything within, hopefully, the existing right-of-way we have, but we know there's going to be a couple properties where we're going to need to approach property owners. We will get appraisals done by a professional appraiser. We're not going to do that. We're going to get appraisals done, and then we'll meet with people. We obviously ask people to donate first. If they're not willing to donate, then obviously we will look at compensation.
Who's donating?
Yeah, it's very common for people to donate. I mean, it is, and that's, honestly, when we do that, it gives us more room and flexibility to spend other money on giving you trees and the screening and the other things that we talked about beforehand. If not, though, like I said, we will work. If we can't come up with an agreement, we'll figure out a way to get it in there somehow and make everybody happy. So.
I was thinking about this as I was sitting here. Love the idea of recreational paths, bike paths, all of that. Awesome idea in parks. Still not convinced it's the best thing along Wagner Road. Not opposed to the widening of Wagner Road, just not positive that we need bike paths and recreational paths. Have there been any studies done, or do we have any information on whether or not allowing access, I guess, or easier access for pedestrians, people to walk on a road, if that in any way increases crime? When you're putting recreational paths and extra ways for people to be on a road that don't involve being in a car, and yet you have houses all around the area that you're doing it. I'm just curious to know if there's information on that.
I'm sure in a world full of statistics, I'm sure there's something out there. What I would do is, and I can do this. I have a meeting with somebody from Westerville. Westerville is very well known for their paths all the way throughout the community. And I can ask when I'm meeting with, as a friend of mine from a long time ago, and I'll ask him to give me the information if they can provide anything, and I'll have my chief of police look out.
I hope the answer is no. But again, as someone who lives along Wagner Road, we're basically giving lots more access to the homes that are there.
Yeah,
So
I know that there are some studies that have been done on that too, and I can look into it.
Yeah.
I think generally, burglars aren't using rollerblades as their getaway.
right, and
but
I'm not really thinking about like big expensive but.
Right. Yeah,
vandals,
or somebody who's
silly
gonna
stuff.
just
Senior
litter
tag and senior
or whatever.
pranks and
Yeah.
just,
I have no responsibility
goofy
for senior
stuff.
tag. That's across the street. You can talk to the other. No, I think when we have these future meetings, that'll give us some time, and Ryan can get that information, and I can get some from some communities that already have a lot of existing trails all the way across.
Thank you.
If there are no other questions specific to this public hearing, what we'll do is we will continue to work and have that conversation and to finalize what our application will look like. Shameless plug, obviously, if you know that I do a weekly show on social media that you can watch at any point in time, doesn't have to be live, but I will provide updates specifically right through there. And then obviously when we're at council, you'll see legislation for council that will be coming up for the survey work and things of that nature. And then much like when we received letters to this, the next time that we get ready to have an open house where we have more specific engineering drawings done, we'll go ahead and redo the same thing. We'll send out the letters and we'll promote it all the way throughout the community so everybody's aware that it is coming, and then we'll take the process from there. Do I have to officially say here in public meeting or, okay, so.
Well,
all right.
one more thing.
One more
do,
thing.
I do
lied.
have comment forms if you want to put any of your comments in writing. I have a couple pens up here. Or you can take one with you and you can just return it to City Hall. Yeah, I mean, that's good enough. I do need them. I include these in the application, so whatever you say, even if you have nasty comments for me, that's fine. I put them all in the application, but I need them back by September 6th in order to do that. So there's a little bit of time, but feel free to grab one on your way out. I don't know, I think I only have about 20.
All right.
If you're willing to fill out one, we'd appreciate it. It's just, again, for the application, good evidence that we, had the meeting, obviously. Appreciate you signing the sign-in sheet, too.
Yeah. If you have not had a chance to sign in the sign-in sheet, you can do so. As always, if you have any other questions about anything in general, I have an open door policy. Just give the office a call. I can meet with you. We can do a Zoom, any of those types of things. Just usually give me about 48 to 72 hours notice after the Tomato Festival. The next couple of days, I'm going to be a little bit busy. So hope to see you all at the Tomato Festival. And again, thank you for coming. Here ends the public hearing. Thank you.
Thanks.
Hi, Mary. How are you? So, I watch these mistakes and I say, oh, guys, one side of us like that.
Yeah. Well, they probably sold their land.
Two of them hit me, and then they died, and I was terrible about that, but I I've walked that Waggoner over here. I gave it up because now everybody's.
Yeah, oh my gosh. It's crazy, isn't it?